Hey, good morning, everybody. On this Sunday, it is May 26th, and I'm Chris Allen here on the Sam channel, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, all sponsored by Ace Hardware Marketplace. Well, I wanted to try to get to you guys early this morning with the latest information because I know some of you right about now, and as I'm doing this live at 6:33 on Sunday morning, I know some of you are just getting up and you're getting ready to go to church, or you may have something planned today because of Memorial Day weekend. I wanted to try to get you updated as early as I could. I still think we're looking at severe weather in some form or fashion, and all the different forms of severe weather, or what we call the different severe weather modes, are all still on the table. That would include damaging wind, damaging straight line winds, large hail, torrential rainfall, and possible flooding and tornadoes. But as we go through this morning, I will tell you that it does look like the primary threat, the primary top of the list of those things I just mentioned, threat, is going to be flooding rainfall. I kind of hinted about that yesterday just from the things I was looking at and from the conference call and from the latest data coming in. It looks like this is going to turn out to be a mostly heavy rain event, with one other caveat. Number 2 on the list would be damaging straight line winds. And some of those winds, as I made mention of yesterday, could be right up to hurricane force. Now, that would be 74 miles per hour plus. So with the already wet, soaked ground around the area, when you get winds that high, there's going to be trees down or maybe even uprooted. It doesn't take a tornado for that. And the ground is so wet and soggy that it won't take much to topple trees, and those trees could go over on power lines, and then you're without power. So those are the primary threats that I'm seeing first and foremost today and tonight. What happens this morning through much of the day will determine what happens tonight. So we can't say for sure that there's going to be tornadoes, but the risk is never zero in these kind of situations. So I want you to pay attention to that. So as you're up and getting ready for church or getting ready for your Memorial Day weekend, maybe you're getting ready to travel today, this is all the stuff that you need to keep in mind. So here's a look outside right now from the Plano cam from where I sit. And you can see kind of a hazy, overcast sky. We've got some rain that's approaching and some thunderstorms. Those thunderstorms have been rather intense back into Missouri and now moving into western Kentucky, which I'll show you momentarily. But let's get to the threats. I want to get to that first of all, and pay attention to this. Feel free to share this, this update, this podcast, if you want to, with friends and family, just so that everybody's on the same page and not going around, as they said on Hee Haw, spreading rumors. The old song. But anyway, here we go. The risk of severe storms still at a level 3 enhanced risk today, including Bowling Green, Nashville, Paducah, Clarksville, Madisonville, Owensboro, over to Corbin, London, I-75 corridor, Lexington, Frankfort. You get the idea. All along the Ohio River, northward to Indianapolis, where they're still going to do the Indianapolis 500 today, which you can see on NBC 40 if you want to watch it. But it does look like that it could be interrupted or maybe even delayed, because they will have severe weather coming through right about the time the race starts this afternoon. Then all the way back into Illinois, Missouri, as you can see here, the wording multiple waves. Okay, that means more than one wave of severe storms today and tonight. The number one threat, wind damage, widespread, because the wind energy with these systems coming through will all contain very possible, very high risk of damaging winds, as I mentioned, up to hurricane strength, 74 miles per hour or higher. It's possible, not for everybody, but in pockets. When we see these storms start to collapse and they come down to the ground, that could happen. Repeated heavy rainfall, flash flooding, especially, see this, South Central Kentucky. That's us. The greatest risk for severe weather and flooding will be after dark. So as they suggest here, have multiple ways to receive your warnings, not just one or two, but if you could have more than that, that would be awesome. Their confidence level in all of this happening is right in the middle, 50-50. So glean from that what you will, but I would rather you guys be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. Either way, we're going to get hit with severe weather. Just what kind will take primary focus here remains to be seen, but I can tell you from the way things are looking, this is primarily going to be a flood and high wind event, less about tornadoes. And let me show you this. So the probability, 30% probability for damaging wind right here, that includes Bowling Green. The hatched areas where you see the little black marks here, that means elevated chances for what I was just talking about, the hurricane force winds of, well, 74 is classified as a category 1 hurricane, but they put 75 plus, but you get the idea. I mean, there could be some 75 to 80 mile per hour winds with some of these thunderstorms that come through. You know that is going to do some damage. That is going to knock over some trees. That's going to knock over some power lines or trees into power lines. And that's going to make for, a hard time for everybody. So especially with all the rain that's coming and the rain that we've already had, as I mentioned, the ground is already well soaked. And so it's not going to take much, maybe a 50 to 60 mile per hour wind to knock over trees or even uproot trees. Power outages are likely in spots. Again, I'm not saying everybody's going to be without power, but there will be issues with power loss with these rounds of thunderstorms that are coming by. So if you're outdoor, camping for the weekend, you need to be aware of that. Lightning, heavy rain, gusty winds. It's not good for anybody that's outdoors. Now to the tornado threat right here in the middle. The greatest tornado threat right now, or the highest tornado threat, is at 10 to 14%, but the possibility of tornadoes being EF2 or greater is in an area from just west of Madisonville to about Clarksville, Tennessee, Dyersburg, right along the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, the Wabash River, Mount Vernon, Illinois, Carbondale, Sikeston, Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, Rollo, and St. Louis. Okay, that's going to be the area that could see the highest risk for tornadoes, and that would come tonight, not this morning. There's a wave coming in this morning that is going to be all about heavy rain, gusty winds, maybe a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, but this tornado threat is mainly for this evening with the second wave as it comes in. Hail, yes, in that same area that you see where we had the high wind risk, it's in the same general area, and it's hatched as well, which means hail could be the size of quarters or golf ball or greater. with some of the stronger storms, and that would be enough to damage your vehicle. Larger than 2 inches in diameter. Golf ball, as I mentioned, or larger with some of the stronger storms. And again, like the damaging winds over 75 miles per hour, not everybody's going to get that. Everybody that's painted in these areas, it doesn't mean all of you will get that, but all of you have a risk of getting that. Okay, so I want you to understand that, please. So here we are, closer view, the level 3 enhanced risk on the scale here. So we're in the middle. Medium chance of that happening as far as the confidence, but I'm still saying that the highest risk is going to be damaging wind threat, maybe secondary, I would say really the rainfall. Rainfall first, then damaging wind threat. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I want you to understand, look at the tornado threat. It's not as much as everything else. If we were looking at reds here and purples and all that, then I would say this is going to be a tornado outbreak, but this does not look like it's going to be an outbreak for us as far as tornadoes. Reports of damaging wind and hail and flooding, yes. That is on the table. Okay, here's the timing and the confidence. And if you saw what I posted yesterday afternoon after the conference call with the Weather Service, this has not changed that much. We will have this first wave coming through this morning, starting at about, well, in about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, until later this afternoon. They're showing Eastern time. We're on Central, unless you happen to be on Eastern time to the east of us. So we're looking at west of I-65, late morning through midday, then spreading east in the afternoon. Most of these look to be sub-severe when they arrive, but as they move further east, where you'll get a lot more sun today than we will here in the Bowling Green area, then those could strengthen and become severe in the afternoon. Okay. And as it shows here, localized flooding is possible. Again, look at the risk here. Tornado risk is in the low category. In these kind of situations, we can't say there's not going to be any tornadoes. Not going to happen. No, we would never, ever say that, because there's always a risk of some kind with this kind of system coming in. So we're going to keep it in the low category. So I don't want you worrying too much about tornadoes. There are other risks just as bad or could be worse in this kind of a situation, that being primarily wind and flooding. And as you can see, medium risks here. I would even say a higher risk for the wind and flooding with this first go round, low in the tornado and hail. But it's tonight, starting at about 9 o'clock or after, and going until the early morning hours tomorrow. The greatest risk for severe weather includes damaging winds and flash flooding. Again, that's going to be the primary threat for tonight. Isolated instances, not everybody's going to see this, of 75 mile per hour winds plus possible. Tornadoes are possible, and large hail cannot be ruled out, but as you can see, they're kind of halfway between the low and medium confidence scale. But again, wind and flooding, that's going to be your highest confidence in what kind of mode, severe weather mode, we're going to be in. That's for tonight's second wave coming in. Now, here's something I want you to really key in on. Excessive rainfall look. The probability of flooding, they have a scale as well. Weather Prediction Center, WPC, also puts out a scale much like the Storm Prediction Center with, marginal, slight, moderate, high risk. Well, look, we are in the moderate risk, and look where that circle is. That bullseye is right here from Bowling Green over to Green River Lake, Lake Cumberland, and Dale Hollow Lake regions. In other words, the Green River Basin is under that moderate risk for flooding. 1 to 3 inches of new rainfall on top of the 1.25 inches that we picked up yesterday in Bowling Green. Some of you picked up more than that. And locally higher amounts are possible. So some of you could even get more than 3 inches of rain. That's pretty high. And already creeks, streams, and rivers are running high, so that's a problem. Minor river flooding possible early next week for the Green and Cumberland River basins. So yeah, just you might as well say all of southern Kentucky. There's going to be flooding, flood warnings, flood advisories, flash floods, all of that. So the greatest risk is in that red area or kind of pinkish looking area, which is a moderate risk. So, we're going to say the funny phrase that people laugh at, turn around, don't drown. Remember the last big rain we had a few weeks ago? We had one person die because they got caught in high water, and that was down in Allen County. So please don't look at that. Don't think of these high waters as I can make it through. I've been on this road 30, 40 years. I know what I'm doing. It's okay. No, don't do that. Come on. I know you don't have time to go the long way back to home, but please just don't. I don't want to hear any more people dying or getting hurt from flood. It's not good. It's just not good. Nighttime flooding, especially dangerous because you don't really know how deep the water is. Confidence in this right here, medium again. Okay, so we know there are several ways to get the weather radio, which I've talked about, TV and radio, SAM 100.7, News40 on your TV, wireless emergency alerts and weather apps, which we have a News40 Weather App. Sirens, don't depend on those always. If you live close to one, what if the power goes out and the backup battery goes out? That siren's not going to work. Don't count on just that. Don't count on just one of these ways to get a warning. That's just too dangerous. So, make sure you have a plan here, as they state. Have it at the ready to go, just in case. I'm not saying all these things are going to happen, but the risk of it happening or the chance of it happening is running higher today than usual. Okay. Now let's go to, I want to show you the rainfall projections here. And as I do, this is for the next 24 hours. And notice look where the bullseye is. The threat for flooding rains is right over southern Kentucky. And on the scale, we're looking at 2 to, in some spots, maybe even close to 4 inches of new rainfall. New rainfall on top of the already well-soaked ground. That's a problem. So please, flooding is going to be a concern. I still think it's going to be the number one threat that we have out of this system today. Tornadoes, lower on the threat scale. All right, let's take a look at the maps. I'll show you what's going on right now and what's about to happen. The winds this morning coming up out of the south at about 5 to 10 with some gusts near thunderstorms. And as far as rain, there's nothing over Bowling Green yet. But look, here's the current time is 6:53 a.m. And look at all of this. And some of these are severe. Back at Poplar Bluff, Missouri, look at the intense lightning. I mean, the lightning is off the scale. Cape Girardeau, Sikeston, Cairo, Illinois, back up to St. Louis. This is all spreading east. There's even a few showers down around Portland, Tennessee this morning, and Murfreesboro. But this is the first wave coming in. Now, will it be severe? It's possible. But to me, this looks more like what we call stratiform rain. This is a complex that has embedded stronger storms. And yes, some of those may reach severe criteria, but it looks like mostly a very heavy rain event. And it is weakening a bit as it moves into a little bit more of a stable air mass over southern Kentucky and central Kentucky. So I'm expecting this to kind of weaken a little bit, but it's still going to pack a punch. With some very heavy rainfall, you can pick up a quick inch or two of rain out of this first system. Satellite view this morning, you can see how we've got that veil of clouds that I showed you on the Plano cam a little bit earlier. And the thicker clouds are spreading east ahead of this complex, but it's behind it that we see some clearing taking place. And then we'll have the next wave coming in from our southwest and another piece of energy that's going to drop out of the plains. And those two are going to meet up for tonight. And that's why we're concerned about what could happen this evening across the area with that second wave of activity coming in. All right, let me go to, let's check some current conditions just so you get an idea before you head out the door this morning for whatever you're doing, whether you're going to church or whether you're going to start your holiday weekend. Temperatures right now at 6:55 a.m. in the upper 60s to low 70s. We've had over the past 24 hours some pretty good rainfall up around Grayson County, almost an inch of rain there. But once you factor in the last 48 hours, that's when you begin to see how much of the heavy rains we had over especially southern Warren County, Bowling Green area south, and right along the Tennessee border. So imagine adding another 1 to 3 inches on top of this. So the ground is very well soaked here. And if we get some of those very strong winds, then it's likely that we'll see down trees and power outages. Likely. Winds this morning mainly out of the south, as I've mentioned, at 5 to 10. Any kind of gust here? Well, it's starting to get a little breezy in western Kentucky ahead of that big area of rain. So it's about to, whoops, there we go. Now you can see it. I forgot to turn that on. There we go. So it's starting to get a little breezy there across the area, western Kentucky. Okay, now, sorry, I didn't have all that clicked on. Let's go to the model blender. And let me click this, make sure I have this one on when I show it to you. There we go. Okay. Now, model blender looks like about mid to upper 80s. I'm going to go with 87 today. Even though we have clouds, I think there will be enough heat and humidity to keep us in the mid 80s before the big surge of rain. This morning, it won't quite make it that warm, but I think in between this morning's round 1 and then round 2 later today, we could hit mid to upper 80s, and it's going to be hot and muggy, kind of like it was yesterday. But the air mass was capped off yesterday, and that's why we didn't see much of any rain at all. Hopefully you were able to get your holiday weekend plans done yesterday, and so you don't have to worry about it today. I think we've we've had enough advertising of this coming in that maybe a lot of folks got their stuff done yesterday and won't be out there today where it's going to be potentially dangerous. Over the next several days, a bit of a cool down into the 70s, then going right back into the low to mid 80s into next weekend, which is the first weekend of June. All right. Now, let me show you the maps with the timing of all this activity coming in. I know I'm going kind of long today, but there's a lot to talk about. So, and I appreciate you staying with me on this. Here's the setup. We've got a stalled frontal boundary to the north. Here comes our main low, two main lows back to the west. Severe weather starts out primarily where we're seeing it this morning with round one of this activity that's currently over Missouri and now moving into western Kentucky. So this will be our round one of activity, severe weather threat back there for the rest of the morning into the midday and afternoon. And here comes our outflow boundary from this complex. This complex is going to throw out a boundary or two that could, we think, initialize more thunderstorm activity once the low and the cold front begin to push in later this afternoon. So we'll have a round this morning, most of it sub-severe, although we could get a couple of warnings out of it. It's the tornado threat is not the biggest deal. The biggest thrill is flash flooding or flooding and damaging wind threat out of this round one this morning. Then we get sort of a break into the afternoon, but then here comes our severe weather threat as we move into this evening, or getting a regeneration with daytime heating with some of the round one leftovers. And here we go. This should be when we see the greatest activity, which is late tonight and very early tomorrow morning. The low pressure center is going to go right up where the Wabash River meets the Ohio River, southern Illinois, southern Indiana. Outflow boundaries pushing southward, which will generate new severe weather further south and into Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Here is Monday morning, about 7 a.m. The cold front will be pushing through western Kentucky, and everything will come to an end. And really, the rest of your Memorial Day tomorrow will be nice. The cold front will have passed through. High pressure builds in, things clear up, and it turns slightly cooler and less humid. We go into Tuesday, not bad. Wednesday, not bad. Thursday, Friday, then into Saturday, the next system comes in, but it looks less potent than this one that's coming through today. All right. So there's a lot to digest here. And for those of you, I see a lot of you this morning that have never been on this podcast. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I do this every morning, 7 days a week, right here on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Then I push it out to my social media sites. And, but I'm doing this a little bit earlier today because I want to make sure I catch you guys going out the door for whatever you're going to do today, especially if you're on your way to church. You should be fine. For those of you watching me in southern Kentucky, you should be fine. It's going to storm, yes, and it's going to rain hard. But if you have trouble driving and that sort of thing, that kind of situation, then maybe you should just stay back. But the worst of the weather potentially will come this evening. A lot will have to do with, I will say this, if we can keep it cloudy like it is out there right now, like this, if we can keep it like this, after the first wave of storms come through this morning, then I say less of a threat of severe weather tonight. It's still going to kick up a fuss tonight, but maybe not as much of a fuss if we can keep the instability down. In other words, if we can keep the sun from coming out for several hours in between this morning and this evening, then things may not be quite as active this evening. But nonetheless, it's a cold front coming through, so that alone is a trigger for some potentially rough weather. But the number one thing to take away here is don't just think of tornadoes. We have other risk, primarily being flooding and dangerous winds, the kind of winds that can topple trees and knock your power out and cause some other problems. Those are the biggest takeaways I want you to have from this update this morning. Now that I've gone 30 minutes, that was 30 minutes. I can't believe that's the longest, longest podcast I've ever had. But I wanted to get all of that in there so that you know the threats and know what's happening. I will be here. I will be watching it all day. And Darius and Noah back at News40, all three of us are watching. We're staying in constant communication with each other. We're staying in communication with the National Weather Service. So if anything changes, you'll hear from me. Guaranteed. We'll be on it. In the meantime, have a safe and wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for watching. And for those of you that are new here, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free, and you'll get alerts every time I do one of these updates. God bless, and have a great day.